started recording. There we go. It should be live. Gonna post announcements. Post this. Post in here. Where's office hours? Post this. There we go. Should get some people in the... Let me also open up the thing to make sure everything's okay. Hello? Oh my god, we already got Schnopit. Schnopit happened. Hello? Hello, I'm Froox, and Syro. And I've got Syro over here.
Hello. I'm here. I didn't miss this one.
Yeah, he didn't miss this one. It's just out of frame.
Yeah.
Hold
I fixed
on.
my sleep schedule. Oh.
Hold on. Need to frame you right. Oh, that works.
Good?
That works. I think we're good.
Yeah,
Hi.
cool. I fixed my sleep schedule. I made it.
Yay. So hello everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Resonance. This is sort of like an office hour / podcast where you can ask us like any questions about Resonite, pretty much like whatever you want to know. Feel free to ask. I'm Froox. I'm here with Syro. And we'll try to like answer like whatever you ask like to the best of our ability. You can ask technical questions, stuff about like the platform in general, its philosophy, its history, its past, stuff on the team, like, or even like just some personal things if you want to as well. Or some like fun questions. It's kind of like up to you. Some of the questions we might forward you to some other office hours because if they're, for example, very focused on moderation, they have their own office hours that happen at like an hour and a half before this one. So like, if you haven't seen that one, you just missed it. But there's gonna be another one next week. And there's also like Pearl Prime's office hours and so on. But we'll try to give you the best answer we can and redirect where necessary. One thing, make sure to put a question mark at the end of your question. That way, like it pops out on our thing, and we can kind of make sure that we don't miss it. And we got like Jack the Foxtrotter, we got Buppler, we got El Tremendo Lagarto, Blaze, and Mintshock. Hello, welcome.
Hello.
And one more piece of detail, if you're asking a follow-up question, please include the whole context of it, because oftentimes like we can answer some other questions, and when we get to yours, and it's like in relation to what you said before, like we already forgot. So we'll, oftentimes don't know, so like you'll have to provide the context as part of the question, and try to keep it in the single message. We're also gonna go into the questions from Discord first. There's a few of them, so we're gonna answer those first and let some more questions pop in the Twitch chat. So, but feel free to ask the questions now. We're gonna start going through them once we're done with the Discord ones. I think that's kind of everything.
Yeah.
We can get started. Don't miss anything. Our audio level is okay. Can you hear us fine? I feel people were very complicated now.
Can you hear me?
Let's
see what these questions are.
Yay. Okay. So the first question from Discord is from Mintshock. How is Resonite handling data backup? Or in other words, how safe are things we create on the platform from being lost, corrupted from software, hardware failure? So we use big kind of cloud service providers for our cloud services. It's a combination of Cloudflare, Azure. There's like some Hetzner stuff. For data kind of stuff, like the Hetzner doesn't matter because that's mostly doing like sort of processing of the data, but it's not like storing any. Meaning the actual data, it's stored like on Azure and Cloudflare. The way those services typically work is they have they have level of redundancy. Cloudflare, oftentimes they will store the data on multiple hard drives. I know like Azure typically does like 3 hard drives that are in different locations. So there's redundancy. If one of the hard drives fails, it just gets copied over to another one. It's kind of like cloud distributed RAID in a way, a little bit. Similar thing with like the database, like, it's a sort of third-party kind of service that has like a lot of redundancy already kind of built in, which means we don't really have to like worry about it. We use services like the Cosmos DB for like, storing data. In general, like, the services, they have like service like level agreements that kind of, ensure a certain level of like, stability. Of course, like nothing is ever, 100%, but, data loss and corruption like should be very, very rare. And that's kind of like what you get like by increasing redundancy, say if one hard drive has like 1% of failing, if you make it 2, it makes it, I don't actually know how it works out to. It makes it like 0.0 something, like that both fail at the same time, and if you have a third one, that lowers it even lower. So you get, something like 0.000 something 1% chance of like something actually getting corrupted. Like they try to make it like really, really low. Those are not like super specific. They're not like super specific numbers. I don't have them at hand, but like, just kind of to demonstrate the principle. So there's also another part of this is whenever stuff gets deleted, like for example you clear something, it actually gets moved into sort of like a trash bucket on the server side, and it's kind of kept there for a month. There also is like, what lets you recover it with the recover command. After the 30 days, then it's get deleted. So if there's like something that's deleted by accident, there's a time period when it can be restored. We also have like another kind of algorithm that kind of like periodically kind of checks stuff and checks like, if something is missing that shouldn't be missing. If it does, it'll, restore it from that and make like it'll essentially make an alert that has happened, but like that pretty much never happens. So I think it had happened like once. So generally like the data should be like, pretty safe. And again, we can't ever give you 100% guarantee, but the guarantee of something getting lost is like very low. Next question is from Alex2PI. I have a forward-looking question about sorting Gaussian splats. I know this is a project of interest. My question is not something I require, but my curiosity. I understand that you have put a lot of thought into this, and if I mention metas I already thought of, can you say why do you not choose them? Order independent transparency, using algorithm as weighted blended OT per pixel line list that eliminate the need for sorting, pre-sorting and clustering. From my understanding, Gaussian plots are static, so you can group them into larger clouds and sort group at the same time instead of individual points. Also, I've been reading up on hybrid sorting, which seems to me also a possible option to apply, but like I say, it's not like any great experience. I just want to hear your opinion. So in part, like the Gaussian spot implementation is based on existing code. If you actually check the changelog when it was released, I linked the GitHub repo like on which like we based our implementation. So in order to kind of make it like implementation as fast as possible, like we kind of used existing implementation that uses specific method. If we wanted to use different method, we have to develop it like probably fully from scratch, which would take like longer time, to kind of get going. So that's pretty much like the main reason. The other part of it is because the existing method is actually for newer versions of Unity. There's what's the word? There's a specific feature for compute shaders called wave intrinsics, and what that does, it allows like when you execute shaders. Compute shaders specifically, it allows the multiple threads to sort of efficiently communicate with each other. The version of Unity that we're on right now does not support it. So we actually had to replace that part of the implementation with a less efficient algorithm, which kind of makes it, kind of a little bit less efficient, but like I sort of like approached it in a way where it sort of amortizes the cost, and you can decrease the rate of the sorting. So it kind of keeps the GPU cost lower because it kind of spreads it out over multiple frames. But also means, if you like change your viewpoint rapidly, you'll see it unsorted for a bit. And we'd like to replace it, but we have to wait, until we are able to switch the rendering engine so we can use more modern kind of algorithms, more modern features. So it's something I want to like revisit in the future, but that's pretty much like the reasons. It's also like a thing, that's always like, developing. So there's
Apologies.
like, lots of different kind of like approaches and things, and sometimes like some of them they do require like, specific way of processing the recursion splats, which makes it, incompatible with the existing software. You have to like, kind of pipe your own thing together. And that kind of makes it less accessible because like if we chose like one of those methods that requires different processing, then then it's useless for the Gaussian splits that people already have because they will need to use more DUI software to read all these reconstructions. Sorry, what are you gonna
Actually, I
say?
was going to ask a question before I died. So this is in relation to the Gaussian splats, and it's something I've kind of noticed with them. I'm curious, like, because I remember you mentioned that they, I think what it is, you render them to like some sort of off-screen buffer and then blip them to the main like render
Yes.
texture. Is that what you do?
Yes.
Okay. Is it? I suppose this will probably have to wait till we get to the new rendering engine, but I did notice that they had like some oddities rendering with transparency. Why does that happen?
So it's because essentially like they're not part of the regular like rendering pipeline. They all kind of render at once, which means when you insert them into the rendering queue, they will either render in front of all transparent stuff or behind all of transparent stuff. And this is essentially like
Okay.
is a choice of like either or. It's also like another problem because like you have like generally when you're rendering transparent things, the way transparent things render is like they cannot write to the depth buffer because you have only a single value. So if you like, if you're trying to blend something and then you like, say like you render something that's in front, it's transparent and wrote to a depth buffer and have something behind, it should still be visible because like, the thing in front is transparent, but if it wrote to the depth buffer, the thing behind is now invisible. So it like, depends on which order, things get rendered. And if you wanted like, Gaussian splits to blend with transparent stuff, like, that suddenly becomes like way more complicated because now you'd have to like you have to sort splats themselves. They need to be rendered in the correct order, for them to blend correctly. But if you wanted them to also, render correctly with other transparent things, you would essentially have to render those transparent things, sort them together with the Gaussian splats, like individual splats, and you have to render a chunk of the splats, render the transparent thing, render another chunk of splats, render another transparent thing, and it essentially complicates the algorithm a lot and makes it very heavily tied to your like whole rendering pipeline. And that will need to happen,
Okay.
every frame. You need to be sorting everything, constantly. So it's transparency in general is, pain with rasterized graphics. And this kind of
Yeah.
exemplifies that. It could get a
Okay.
little bit better if we split the rendering, so it's at least it renders like a Gaussian splat. It's like it tries to render it as part of the transparency order, so it'll the whole thing will be sorted based on the center, but it's also only gonna work for small Gaussian splats because if you have one that covers the entire scene, then
Yeah.
it doesn't really help you. And all of the Gaussian splats, they're big ones, they're entire scene, which means it's not really worth the extra effort. At least not right now.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. The next question is from let's see. There's another from Discord. Yosh is asking, hello, I have noticed that stream VOD starting from 2023-03 Blood on Clock Tower game have not been automatically saving as past broadcasts, where Twitch holds votes for 2 weeks. I have a few questions. Why was the decision made? Will be undone so that past broadcasts can be viewed and archived more easily? If not, how will archiving important streams such as office hours be handled in the future? I maintain my own archive of every single stream that never happened on the Resonite app channel, and I have 3 streams that are just go now. This includes moderation office hours, which to my knowledge is now lost. It also means that very annoyingly I have to download as they are live. So the reason it got set is because I was streaming Blood on a Clock Tower that's part of a campaign, and the rules of the campaign are you cannot publish VODs until a certain date. So that kind of had to be done because of the rule, and I think it just never got switched back. I'm gonna say though, the Twitch itself, like it's not really an archiving method because they do delete them. For Resonance, they actually like have like a separate recording, and it gets uploaded to our YouTube channel, so you can actually find it there. So we do have like our own way, kind of like of archiving it. I know like Pram has also his own method. Where it kind of like publishes because he doesn't even do them through Twitch, he does them through Discord, so he has like own method of archiving them. I don't know actually what the moderation of like team does. It might be something you want to bring to their office hours, and kind of if you're like interested in archival, ask them to archive theirs. And kind of publish them. So I would probably like bring that like to theirs. They should be still like recorded on the Twitch, so assuming they're not deleted, they should be there and you should be able to download them. But the archivals, handled by each like team that does their own office hours. So like we don't have like a central handling for that right now. Next question is from Julian Todd. Hi Froox, I saved my question for here instead of asking Creator Jim today. I've made friends with people in local arts college where they have been buying Quest headsets without knowing what to do with them. I'd like to give them a Resonite to some instructors to some idea their job to learn about this phenomenon. What do you think I should say and include in this demo? The problem with VR novices is that you can lose so quickly that they stop taking anything in, so you have to keep it simple. But you want to show off some mind-blowing stuff too. It's very difficult when you have years of experience to put bugs in some of their shoes. Is there any place we can share actionable ideas and guidelines on how to onboard new VR users to Resonite so they get the idea? So I feel it generally depends, what your target audience is, what their comfort is, with new tech devices. Because sometimes like when I've been demoing stuff like to VR, it's like with some people, like it can be difficult to even explain basic controls. So you're gonna tell them like, oh, press this button to grab something, and they'll be like, what is happening? They'll be mashing all the buttons, and they'll get like really confused and very easily overwhelmed. So there is definitely something to take into consideration, and what works best like in that case is like trying to bring them into some sort of like on Rails experience, like one like where you just put the headset on them, and stuff happens around them. They don't need to like do anything on their own. You guide them through it. Either like in world, so like in multiplayer environment, you show stuff in front of them, they just watch. Or like even some experiences like where you literally just you sit and things can happen. Like a while back, I actually built an experience called Sightline the Chair, and it was like I think back in 2014 or so, and the whole point of that experience is like the only way you interact with it is you look at things. Like all the mechanics are just based on looking, and that experience worked like really well because like all I needed to do is put a headset on the person and tell them just look around, and then stuff just happens around them, and it would kind of look around and so on. So the simpler you can make it, the more on rails the experience you can make, the better. If you do want them to have like some interaction, like keep it simple, like keep it like they they just touch things, like if they can reach out with their hands, because it's another thing. If like I've noticed people like especially less technical people, like it's easier for them if the interactions are more kind of physical, like there's a button and they just kind of they touch it, they don't need to like do any kind of more complicated set of things. So it's generally kind of stuff like that, like on rails experiences, very simple interactions, so they kind of avoid like getting overwhelmed. And we can be in VR with them, I feel that's more powerful because like you can just kind of be showing stuff to them. You can put a headset on and then you put headset on, and like just kind of do like you do stuff in front of them to kind of like just guide them through it. But also you want to be like watch their kind of reactions, watch if they're kind of following along, so they don't get like too overwhelmed. Maybe check up with them too, like are you following along, like along, would you like me to explain this thing more, or would you like would like me to continue and stuff like that. The next question, there's actually more. So if you're, oh no, these are actually before. noticed once before. If you're asking any more questions in the Discord, we might not like do those, like ask them in Twitch right now if you're like watching live. But this one's still before the stream, so I'll go to this one. Can you explain a bit more about how reflection probes work? I understand the basic principle of what they are doing and how to use them, but I don't know how much of it is done on hardware level. Are there more ways we can use them? Is there a reason you can't just make them with a camera? Or why we can't change perspective they're captured from? Or why we can't change the resolution of individual faces on cube map? Or is it actually worth to call them in and out? When I did that avatar station, I encountered a bug where it doesn't load properly if you load when the word is called out, but it makes me wonder if there's something heavy that the CPU has to process or just simple stuff that's been sent to graphics card. Note that this was asked probably Prime few years ago, and my begins question. So there's a few things in it. So like reflection probes, they have like multiple parts to them, but if they just exist in the world, you have two basic types. There's baked ones and there's real-time ones. For baked ones, what a reflection probe essentially is, it's a special type of texture called a cube map. So it's like, instead of a single plane, it's like 6 textures, that are forming a cube. And what it does, it kind of like, it essentially gives you full 360 kind of like, view. So they're good at capturing sort of like, environmental like data. So if you like, put a reflection probe somewhere, it essentially renders everything around it into like 360, which gets stored as the cube map. And that texture can then be used, to provide like reflections to surfaces, which is an approximation, but it tends to work pretty well. So there's a few questions. I'm also gonna say the real-time ones, they kind of do the same thing, but they essentially render it, every frame or every like 6th frame. Like they kind of keep rendering constantly, which is a lot heavier load because it has to kind of keep constantly re-rendering the scene around it, which can be quite heavy because essentially rendering like more camera views. So, but otherwise, like for the way they kind of apply things, they kind of work the same. Is just how the texture is sourced. Like, is it just texture that's loaded from hard drive, or is the texture that's being computed like constantly? When they are providing reflections in the world, like what it's essentially doing is kind of looking at the angle you're looking at something, and then it like say like I have like a there's like a ray, and I look here. Actually, let me do this. So I'm gonna draw like a cube map. So imagine this is your reflection probe cube map that like rendered, into which you have rendered the scene. So these are like all textures, and then say like there's an observer here, and they're kind of looking at the surface, and you look at the surface. And then when you think about what happens to the light bounces off, and it bounces off like this way. So if you have like this, it essentially uses this to sample this texture, so it picks whatever value is here, and that's used to source the reflection. And it's a little bit out of frame, so let me adjust a little bit so I can put it in frame. There we go. So it kind of like bounces off, and if you have like observer that's looking from here, it bounces off this way, and it's like used to kind of like sample this thing. But for every sampling is essentially as if the the hit point is at the center. So for this one's gonna be the center, for this one's gonna be at the center, which means the reflections are not 100% accurate, but it's good enough a kind of approximation that it tends to work. For a questions why you can change the perspective they're captured from, like I don't actually know what you mean by that. Like you can change which point they're captured from, but like I don't know what you mean by changing perspective. You have to kind of clarify on that one. And there's a resolution individual faces of the cube map. That's kind of how cube maps work on the hardware level. All the faces need to be the same size. It's kind of like how the GPU works. There's not really much. Usually, there's not much reason to have them like different like resolutions. So it's not really worth like the complication in the hardware. And this definitely can be like worth to call them in and out, because like it is an like additional thing to the system. Actually, it does add a little bit of extra performance, like when you have multiple stack reflection probes, because the blend between them. But whether it's like, it makes a little big performance impact or not will depend, on the specifics of the world. It's probably not that heavy. You have to kind of test it. Usually, like when you ask, for anything performance, the best way is do A/B testing, test one scenario, test the other, like, test it with multiple people, see if they notice like, difference in performance. Because it's gonna depend on a lot of factors. So if they are real time, then you definitely want to call them out, because real time ones will keep rendering, constantly, and that is very heavy. Like rendering more views, that definitely has like a pretty big impact. So this kind of helps. Like, I don't know if I answered everything, but if you have any follow-up questions, ask in the chat. So we'll leave the other stuff because there's like some kind of discussion. Like, so for any new questions, make sure to ask them in the Twitch chat. We do have like a bunch of questions piled up, so we'll get to those at this point. I'm gonna just fix up the camera. There we go. So we got a question from Grand UK. Schnuppet. Sarah, do you have any Schnuppet?
Do I have any schnappets today? Let me think.
Any Schnuppets?
Any schnappets? Oh, I'm sure I had one. I was sure I had one. I can't think of any off the top of my head real quick.
Okay, Grand, you don't get your Schnuppet answered. Try next week.
Sorry.
Next question is from Jack the Fox Otter, who's asking, I need to adjust the camera a little bit more because it's clipping into the thing. There we go. So I've got a question already. A friend of mine Unity crashed earlier, and it got us thinking. When we get multiprocess architecture and the renderer becomes its own dedicated thread, would it become possible to auto-reboot the renderer in case of Unity crash without bringing down Froox engine in the process? Yes. There's actually... I think I might have already talked about this one, but this is actually one of the benefits of multiprocess architecture. You make the thing a lot more robust as a whole. And I was actually making like a design decision on the audio system recently, deciding, if you're gonna like whatever audio we render, if we pipe it back into Unity and have Unity output it, or we're just gonna output it directly. And I've decided like we should output it directly. Like, Unity will not know about audio at all. Because the reason is like once the split happens, if the render crashes, you won't be able to see for a bit, but we can reboot the renderer, re-upload everything. But you'll still be able to hear people. So like if you do happen to crash, your site will go away for a bit, but you can still communicate, you can still talk. So yes, that will be a thing. It should make things like more kind of like robust, a lot more kind of flat, like, crash resistant. So that's gonna be one of the big benefits of the multiprocess architecture.
Instead of virtual reality, you will only have audio, except it's I mean, could you actually do that? Like, just have no video and only audio, and it would still work when you move your head around?
Well, it's probably not gonna react to your head moving around, because that will be coming from Unity, because Unity is gonna be the one interacting with the VR device, which is where it's getting, the head rotation from. Meaning like your head will be essentially be frozen, because like the main process is not gonna be getting any new, poses. Once the render like spins back up, like, then it's just gonna work. But
okay,
you'll be able to hear people. It's kind of got like a similar thing happens now when you freeze. So like when you freeze, oftentimes like, most of the time you'll still be able to hear people, even if there's like, very long lag. So it's kind of gonna be like that, except like, you probably won't even see the frozen frame. You'll just see like, things reloading. Next question's from Glitch the Fur. He's asking, how are you speaking if the heart rate is on your collar is 0? My heart is just taking a vacation for a bit. It's actually at your place. Actually, no, it's also like, that's how I can speak, because like glitch is so cute that literally, like it just the power of the cuteness is keeps me going.
He stole your heart.
No, I gave it to him.
Oh, okay. You're just keeping it warm.
Yeah, it's keeping it warm. It's like it's a cat. Next question's from Erasmus0211. Has actually pick a big first. Has performance while hosting sessions dropped? Recently, I find it near impossible to host 6, while I used to be able to do 12. We haven't really heard anything, so like if you do have like anything that would like suggest adjusting the camera a bit more. We haven't like heard anything, so like not that I'm aware of. It kind of depends, because like there can be a lot more factors to this. One of them, like, what are you hosting? And I don't know, like, when you say performance, what kind of performance do you mean? Is it like, is the server dropping frames? Is it like the network? Like, it can mean a lot of things. So you probably need like a lot more details.
I always find these odd because it's like, how would the game's performance change, like, if nothing happened?
Yeah. Usually there can be like, another factor, there's a lot of variables. Like, it can literally be something with the hardware you're running on. It can be something with your connection. Like, but the problem is also like, we don't know what kind of performance you're talking about, because it's a very different questions if you're asking, is the performance, is the CPU usage higher, or is the network bandwidth higher? It can also be, stuff like maybe people have more stuff on their avatars, and that's, making bigger load. There's too many variables to really be able to answer this. If you do notice like something and you can measure a difference, then that's something worth looking into. But for this, the question is a little bit too vague.
Yeah.
Next question's from Blade. Oh, actually.
Yeah, I think that's
wait in the chat. Yeah. Grand UK is asking, is there a no to get when slots are created at all under a slot recursively? So you mean like get when child is added, but like it's added anywhere in the hierarchy, I guess?
They basically mean slot children events, but for slots under that slot and under those slots as well, and under everything.
There's not, because like that's not something the engine tracks. One of the reasons is like, it would be very, very heavy to track, because it's easy for slots to track, when their children are added or removed, because it happens to them. But if you wanted to track it for any in hierarchy, now every single slot will need to get every single event from every single child. Which means, like, if you listen to the root slot, for example, that we need to be getting events from literally the entire hierarchy, but so are all of its children. So that's something, that stacks up, like, really fast. And if you wanted to introduce this kind of thing, it would have a global negative performance impact, and so we don't add that kind of functionality. If you want something like that, you probably have to instrument the system, build your own, and kind of handle that kind of stuff. But it's unlikely something we would add globally, because essentially everyone would then have to be constantly paying the performance, penalty for this, even if they're not using the feature at all, which is gonna be in most cases.
Yeah, there is like the global slot bag too, but even that is just just too much.
Next question is from Grand UK. How do local stores interact with loops? They don't really have much to do specific with loops. Like you can have a loop and have it just work with it. I don't quite understand the question.
The only difference is that anything you put into the store will persist outside of the loop and also into other contexts, but you can use them just about the same way.
Yeah, the loop makes no difference really. Next question's from DJ Prodigy Hunters, and thank you for this is actually a thing that I missed in the initial blurb. DJ Prodigy Hunter is asking, what is the name of the world you are in? This is called Shadowed Cove. It's by the team Vibes, and this is one of the MMC entries. It's the winner in the social world category for big teams. It's a very beautiful world. I strongly recommend checking it out. It's there's a lot of kind of like really cool features, like in Team Vibes, like every year, every MMC, like they do like great job at making really polished, really beautiful looking worlds with lots of kind of cool interactivity. So yeah, definitely check it out. And again, it's called Shadowed Cove by Team Vibes.
Shadowed Cove.
Yes. Next question is from Kestra Blades. I think I was going to ask this a few resonances back. Are there any plans for ephemeral instances? I imagine instances closing, the second host leaves, are unintuitive from users coming in from other platforms. I also feel like I had another part of this question, but I forgot. I don't quite actually. So by ephemeral, it sounds like you want like an instant that like disappears after, like.
Yeah, ephemeral means like not,
but
persistent. It means it's temporary, basically.
But what's kind of confusing is the second part of the questions, because they're saying that instances closing the second host leaves are unintuitive from users coming from other platforms. So like the
I guess what they probably mean that like are there plans to make it to where like if the session host leaves, the entire world doesn't explode, something like that.
Oh, I mean, it would be kind of opposite of ephemeral.
Yeah. I think they maybe just got confused on the word meaning.
Yeah, I'm a little bit confused. So like, if this is not what you mean, like feel free to like make clarification. So what you probably want, like if you want like sessions that don't explode when the host leaves, that would be something like session transfer. So you transfer the hosting to another user, which is something that's been requested, but it's also something that's pretty complex to do well. And it's a question like, do we want to invest time into implementing that, where it might be more worthwhile to instead implement, sort of more official kind of hosting for sessions, so you can like easily provision, because that's kind of how I originally imagined the question is like, when you say ephemeral instances, to me that kind of means, you have a world, you join that world, it's like the server actually spins it up when you join it, and then when all the users leave, it actually spins it down, so it's no longer using resources. If somebody else tries to join, it spins it up again. So like from the user perspective, the session is always running, but not on the server side, it's not actually always running. When the users leave, the session, is kind of gone. At least like, but like it is abstracted from the user. So that's something we would like probably want to do more than like doing the host transfer, because that kind of works well. It's also for bigger sessions, you generally don't want the user hosting them, because it's like, increased load, it depends on the internet connection, lots of other factors. So it might be better to just, invest our time into making good, tooling for managing automatic hosting. So you don't even need to like, set up and configure headless. It's like, one gets automatically spun up, and you just kind of connect to it, and it's very kind of transparent and easy to use. So that would be our preferred approach for this kind of problem. It also makes sure that, the host is actually, equipped with good hardware, has good internet connection, so like the session can like run pretty well. And kind of leave the, self like user hosted like sessions to like, smaller ones, like when you don't want to like deal with that, or when you need to kind of save cost and so on. Next question is from let me just position this right, from Kaiser Blades. I know physics are a very complex task to take on. I was just wondering if you have on your end even just preliminary thoughts on how you're interested in handling it, however far in the future it'll be. Will you be trying to write your own physics engine, or will you be implementing a physics engine such as Havoc or Rubicon? So we already use a physics engine. It's called Beppu version 2. We do use a part of it because like there's more to physics than a lot of people think. Because usually when you say physics, people just imagine, things, eating through space, rolling around and so on. But even something like this, I just grabbed this thing. This is physics. What happens is, when I grab it, there's like a collider on this, and, and when I click, it shoots a raycast and that hits, this body, even though it's like, not rolling around, the physics engine is used to figure out where it is. It's also, if you go into physical locomotion and you move around the environment, that's also using physics. And there's actually rigid body physics under the hood. It's just kind of constrained, to the particular use case. You can, even if you really want to, you can abuse it to make sort of like, rigid body physics with some limitations. It's not going to be very efficient, but you can do it. Because there's already kind of, we do have like partial integration. What it probably means is like, specifically implementing rigid body physics, which is something that Beppu version 2 supports, something that we haven't integrated yet. One of the reasons is that we are kind of focusing on performance update, and the Beppu physics engine is heavily optimized for the modern .NET runtime. So right now, like, it's very kind of handicapped. Once we do the performance update where we switch to .NET 9, that's essentially going to remove that constraint, which makes it now possible to, to prioritize integrating rigid body physics. There's a few things that might happen before then as well, like some of the data model updates and so on to make things a bit more efficient. But it is something that will kind of come down the line. We don't like, plan like switching the physics engine. We're gonna keep like with Beppu version 2 because it's a really good fit. It's also like when we run it with modern .NET runtime, it's very, very performant. So we pretty much like need to integrate the remainder kind of its functionality to have like full rigid body physics, provide like network synchronization for those, which is another big part, and then integrating into various tooling, so you can like, mark things, as rigid body and have them like apply forces to them and do all kinds of fun stuff.
Yeah, Beppu's also like natively C# as well. Like there's nothing unmanaged. Yes. Well, there's a lot of unmanaged code in it, but there's not like any unmanaged libraries, which means we don't have to like, it's not paying to compile. You just kind of put it in and it just kind of works.
Yeah. Yeah, like it fits really well like into like our kind of architecture and design. So it's I feel for us that's like the best kind of choice for the physics engine. Next question is also the author of Beppu Physics, like Norby is like he's like one of my kind of favorite developers, because anytime like we kind of come to him with issues, he's always like fixes them well, and he's very funny and goofy, but also super smart. So like I really like to enjoy. Next question's from Mint Shock. Is it in theory possible to have lightweight version of Resonite for use in VTubing? It would have to be very lightweight to run in the background. I mean, in theory, yes. Like in theory, like I don't like questions like this super much, because in theory almost everything is possible. Usually the question is, is it something we're gonna prioritize, and how long will it take? Which are sort of like related questions, but using Resonite for VTubing is actually something I would want to happen. I would kind of want to use it that way myself, because we already have like lots of functionality for it. We have avatars, we support like face tracking. So if we integrate support for like desktop face tracking, so you can use a webcam, you can use your phone. You can already just use our existing avatar. There's gonna be some extra tooling to make it easy, like green screen or just alpha. You can have like you can script effects like with Twitch chat, for example. So it's it's I lost my train of thought. It's something I want to happen at some point. One of the big things that we're actually working right now, like I kind of lost my train of thought. I got it back. One of the things that is kind of helping getting towards it is the current focus on performance improvements, because that's gonna make Resonite much more lightweight, which means it's gonna be much more friendly for use for VTubing. Next question is also from Kaiser Blades. I know Molecule is in the works, and outside, Steam builds our future plans alongside it. Do you have any current break glass plans in case SteamVR is discontinued or breaks due to Valve's growing disinterest in VR?
Disinterest? I
I
don't know
don't.
where you get
Yeah, I don't
that
know about it
from.
because they're still like updating it. Like so if SteamVR breaks, like that's gonna break a lot of games. They would even break like Valve's own titles like Half-Life Alyx. So I don't think that's like super realistic. Um, like if that really like were to like happen, like I don't think that's gonna happen for like a long while. But there are like standards like OpenXR, which like you can kind of move to, and it kind of makes it a little bit more agnostic towards things. But like if SteamVR like is gone, like then pretty much like the headsets that like rely on it are gone, and you can't use those. So like I don't really see that as realistic scenario. It's also like Molecule is not like for running VR. That's kind of like versioning, which is like very different thing. That's like an updater and so on. So like it doesn't really help. Um, like I feel like you're kind of conflating Steam builds, which is like distribution of binaries, and SteamVR, which is used to like run VR headsets. Um, so I don't fully understand like where you're coming from with the question. But anyway, I don't see SteamVR being discontinued. Like I think that's very unlikely because just of how huge impact it would have.
Yeah.
Um,
And like even in the event that like it like let's say SteamVR broke tomorrow, it's gone into the sun. Like there are open source like VR runtimes that are more than capable of doing that too. Like
yeah,
there's like Monado and like Open Composite. I actually don't use SteamVR anymore because I run Linux and I use the fully FOSS like VR stack and it works just fine. So, but I don't think that's likely to happen. Like I don't see that happening.
yeah.
I don't see SteamVR breaking.
It's like I feel like if it like if it disappeared like that would pretty much like set like huge chunk of the VR industry on fire, and I don't see that happening.
A lot of businesses with lots of money would be very mad.
Yeah. Um. Oh, there more discussion within the chat. Uh.
Mm,
So I don't know if we should like get into this one, like, but they're asking because question.
no.
Valve's currently split internally. The card is definitely still in development and close to release, but VR team is internally so for more than used to be. Like, it sounds like this is kind of based on kind of like rumors.
Yeah, this
Um,
sounds like really rumory. I'm sorry, guy.
yeah, I I don't think we like we can only like really base things on what's out there, and there's like a lot of rumors, but rumors can oftentimes be very wrong. So I don't think it's like worth like spending too much time on them, at least not on our end. Um, to kind of follow up, like, so my question is more so, what do you think if they do end up leaving PCVR in the dead? Um, I don't
Yeah,
I don't know what like leaving PCVR for the dead means, because there's like other headsets. There's like one like they even released Steam Link, and they put a lot of effort into that one. So I don't think this is like super realistic, and there's very likely gonna be other PCVR like headsets and things. So I don't. There's actually there's been I saw like recently a thing like where there's a lot of people saying like PCVR is dying, PCVR is dying, but I think like was it actually Valve like Steam like somebody like released like a statistic where they actually saw that it's growing. So
yeah,
like
like I don't think like PCVR is far from dead. Like
yeah,
just let's look at like platforms like, like us and like VR chat and big screen and all of these other like social places. There's so many people on there. And like yeah, some of them do support like mobile platforms, but a lot of them are PCVR.
and even the mobile platforms is kind of different experience because you're like a little more limited on those. So like I don't think this is very realistic kind of scenario. Uh, Next question's from Shining Hero 1. I've noticed the cube map area of effect can be rotated. Is this unit a limitation? Yes. Simple enough.
Also, the case will ask for the rest of the questions to be removed, so...
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
Wait, even this
that's
one,
one
or
of
this is the ephemeral?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think they just said the rest of them. I think we should just remove them then.
Okay. So we can answer. Okay, next one is from Orion Moonclaw. Where do I put it? There we go. Orion Moonclaw is asking, I know open sourcing is something that was asked about, if potentially done, would take a lot of effort, but would it be possible in the shorter term if source code could be made available under the same license as binaries themselves? I think that could help us modders quite a bit, especially when we have to come through the compiled code or want to make more substantial changes, like customizing the headless client for certain events. It's probably still kind of tricky because we will have to kind of audit the code, make sure, like, is it actually okay for us to share all of this code? Because there are some parts that, we do need to replace, like, for example, the final IK port. We do have, license for it, and it's kind of, been ported, and we got an okay for the port, but doesn't mean, it's okay for us to share the source code of the port. So there might be, something we need to replace, and there might be, other pieces like that. So we do want to kind of approach this kind of carefully. The way, I kind of did, another video on this, a while back, so I do recommend going to the YouTube channel, because there's a longer video where I go into more detail. We kind of want to do open sourcing gradually, where we do it component by component, and we ideally want to be, accept, contributions, but we also have to be careful about it, not to get overwhelmed, and make sure, we kind of keep things, organized, because we start, getting lots of disparage, contributions and things, or, even, say, we make the code, readable, people might want to start kind of submitting things, and it might get kind of messy. So we want to, make sure, we're ready for it, essentially.
Yeah, and lots of parts of it's also adding things like documentation to the internal stuff too. We go through and make a pass and make sure everything's nice and usable for you guys.
So next question's from Norlog. Hello Froox. Any new progress on a better game engine that we actually have right now? I assume you mean the rendering engine, probably, because we most of Resonite is built on a custom game engine called Froox engine, which we don't have any plans to replace. We do want to replace the renderer. That's been a thing that's been kind of ongoing in the background for a bit, but don't have any updates on that right now.
You're gonna switch to Game Maker?
No. So yeah, I can do that now. I guess this is another question. Yeah. This question was mostly user plans.
We want to remove those.
Yeah, I was just checking if there's any new ones. So I'm checking if this is.
I haven't seen any.
Next question's from Reeden. Which library that is held back by Mono would be the one you look at the most forward to update when you were able to do switch to .NET 9? There's a few. So the one we already mentioned, Beppu Physics, we can sync up to the latest one. It's gonna take, huge advantage of it. There's, the one Tracy that you're
Yes, Tracy. Oh my gosh, I really want to implement Tracy so bad, dude. We get so many good performance metrics. Oh.
Yeah. There's also some mathematics libraries that also use the .NET 9. They have a lot of cool functions. System numerics. Well, system numerics we can already use. It's just not fast.
No, the newer ones with
the new ones.
It has so much newer stuff in it.
Oh yeah. But there's also built-in parts, not a library. But yeah, there's so much new stuff in the .NET itself. There's also some image libraries that we're kind of thinking about switching to, just replacing free image, but they do require the new one. So there's a bunch, and we'll probably do exploration, find even more.
Yeah.
But the Beppo physics is probably the main one because right now we kind of have our own fork, and I had to backport some of the changes, and it's kind of weird because like it's so far ahead now.
Like a Frankenstein.
Yeah, it's like a Frankenstein, and like we kind of have to maintain the Frankenstein. I mean, there's like issues we have to like like once we are able to replace, we can just be like hey, like Norbert, this bug, and then he fixes it, and we just merge the latest version, and it's fixed. Yay!
Yeah, Beppo is probably the most exciting one, just because like it runs like it runs. I'd probably be underestimating it by saying like 50 times faster on the new runtime. It's just so much faster.
It's designed for it's like, and even had like more performance improvements because the version we are using is before he actually switched to .NET 5, which was like back then. And then he made a switch to modern .NET runtime, and the reason was like he wants to utilize all of the like super performance improvements in the runtime, which means we'll get those as well. It's gonna be really neat.
I really want to remove these.
No, I think this one's a new one, because it has like something we haven't answered. Yes, you're right that I meant rigid body. Sorry. Does Beppo physics enable soft body physics as well? So it doesn't. It doesn't really do soft body physics. Usually, the way you do soft body physics with those engines is you kind of approximate it. Like for example, you can do like like a blanket or a balloon. Like if you link a lot of rigid body physics like objects together with like constraints. So that's like one way to achieve them. It's not the most efficient. You can do it. You'll be able to do it once we have rigid body physics for approximations. Shining Hero 9 is asking, silly idea, but how much .NET Nightcon could you Frankenstein into the old mono libraries before Unity breaks? I mean, the whole point is like that we don't have to, because the goal is to move like like 99% of the engine out of Unity, so it runs at .NET 9 and doesn't run under mono. So pretty much none. Next question's from Grand Decay. Do local variables in Protoflux get masked in loops? So say I make local variable of type string and write A to it, then write B into the local within for iteration, then I continue from loop and continuations. Will that be in the local, A or B? If B is present, then no masking happens. If A is present, then variable was masked. There's not really any masking. So like if you're like writing in a loop, the store is gonna contain whatever is the last value written to it. The good way to think about like local variables is like they're like local variables within a method function. So if you declare one, and then you have a loop that keeps updating it, at the end of the loop it's gonna have like whatever the last value you've wrote to it. I guess we delete this one. Okay.
Yeah, and then
Platypus744 is asking, are there any potential use cases for Resonite or VR general in professional business related areas that you have excited? Boah. Yes, there's a bunch. We actually have like a number of companies like using Resonite for like in professional business kind of uses. There's like some universities, there's some like training applications, museums. I don't know. I'd have to kind of check on some of them because like some of them like we can't talk about yet, but they are very exciting, and I hope they will go through. I don't know if it's like public yet, so I'm not gonna say. There's some other ones, like we do have also some partners, like for example VRSys in Austria, and ViaVerse, who's in Japan, and they've been like making a lot of kind of like business deals and so on. I'm just kind of thinking, because I don't know which ones is public or no, so I don't want to say something I shouldn't, but there are some kind of exciting kind of use cases. There's also like some like TV kind of production stuff and so on, so like there's a lot of kind of exciting uses. But I do actually recommend join us on our recap streams, because Bob, who's our like finance officer, he oftentimes goes over some of the business kind of uses. And like you can kind of learn more about like what we do in this kind of area, and usually like comes prepared for that one. knowing like what is public and what is not public yet. Next questions, Nuki-kun. Did Sarah just say we are going to be rebuilding your own cube app render?
No, I did not actually. I have no clue where you got that from.
Next question, it's also from Nuki-kun. Any advice on how to better optimize mirrors within a world, including weird stuff that we might not normally try? I noticed that distance calling only seems to work as a single plane, defined by user view angle, which doesn't call things being seen from the side, and I'm wondering if there's ways around it. I also noticed that you can set it up to have transparency, such that you can show smooth metallic surface behind it to show the reflection probe. I'm a little bit confused because there's like a lot.
The first part of the question is like, that's pretty clear, but like I'm not sure what all the rest of the information attached means.
Yeah, I don't know how it kind of relates to that, unfortunately. But for optimizing mirrors, so give people like so there's like a few things. If you let people lower the resolution, like, well, the most efficient thing is not to render the mirror when you don't need to. So if you have like calling system that disables it, or like lets people kind of toggle it, or maybe like if you detect the users, not in the area, they cannot see it, make sure the mirror is off. That's the most efficient thing, because the most efficient thing is just not doing the thing, which in this case is, rendering a mirror. The other part you can do is, lower the resolution, because the higher the resolution, the higher the load on the GPU. You can also lower, like, you can disable per pixel lights. If it works enough with the lighting in the scene, that's going to help the performance potentially quite a bit, because the mirrors will force everything to be rendered using the forward path, which the more lights you kind of have, the heavier it gets. So if you disable that, it's not gonna, like, the lighting's not gonna be as accurate, but it'll run faster. And those are pretty much like the main things you can kind of do for that.
Yeah.
There's a note, avatar station. Correct enough, 15 months less calling to. Yeah, it's just context. Nuki-kun. Should we rush to put any feature request addition for reflection probe cube map systems? Should we report esoteric bugs? Are they not likely to be fixed before implementation? Assuming I understood right that you are reworking that soon. Well, we're not reworking that soon. Generally, I would say just report things. Make whatever, like, this is actually one that could be like, to the snippet is like when we like announce like a new system, people are like, oh, like for this system implement this. The best thing is, just ask for the feature you want. Let us decide, we might say we're gonna wait until we implement the system, but we also might look at it and be like, no, we can implement this now. The important thing is you let us make the decision. Because like, whenever like we evaluate it, we kind of look at the state, of the code base, we look at what our plans are, we look at the complexity of what you're asking is, and based on that, we will decide how we approach it. So even with the bugs, if there's like a bug that's pretty severe, we might prioritize it, for a system that's going to be replaced, unless, if the bug is like more minor, and fixing it would take, a long time, then we'll be, okay, we're not going to prioritize it because it'll cost us a lot of time. But if it's, very simple, say it's a 5-minute fix, then we might just be, okay, we're going to fix it. The important thing, like all of these factors, you don't have the information to make the decision, so the best thing you can do is, make the issue, and we'll make the decision kind of on our end. So if you feel like it's not something that's super serious, you don't want to make the issue, that's also fine. But, you're not gonna know the answer. Like, the answer is gonna depend on the specific issue.
I do actually have now a snippet that is like adjacent to that.
Yes.
And that is when people like come to conclusions about what they think is happening, like say they discover a bug and they're like, oh yeah, I'm pretty sure it's because of XYZ, because of whatever. And I'm like, well, did you actually like test it? And they're like,
Oh,
well, no, but it happens when I do this. And I'm like, well, but did you actually make sure that it's like this and not the 5 other systems that are attached to it? And like and things like that. And then they like make a bunch of like, then they make like an issue on it, and it's like, it's just,
I actually have a video I
that
want to
makes me
bring
stop
in.
it.
There
Yeah.
is you make a good point, because there is a thing that happens, because I feel like one of the things there's there's a science experiment this always reminds me of. There's a one called the Skinner box pigeon like experiment. And what it is, like what they did is like they would essentially put pigeons in boxes, and they would make it so like they would randomly, completely randomly, they would get some treats. And what they found is that the pigeons, they would see like maybe the pigeon was, pruning its wing when it happened to get the, treats. And then the pigeon will actually start pruning its wing like a lot more because it thinks that's what it got the treats. And eventually it would get treats at random, and then it would reinforce, the thing that like, okay, pruning the wing, gives me treats. Or another would be like rubbing its head on the floor. So, and then it would get treats at that time, which was completely random, but the pigeon would think it happened because it was rubbing, its head on the ground. And essentially what that experiment found is, you can, our brains, and it's, because it's not just pigeons, it's like pretty much everyone, like our brains will make connections where none exist in some cases. And like, this kind of feels like similar, like when people happen to be doing something, the bug happens, and they'll make the connection, it happened because of us doing the thing. And what people don't realize is, sometimes things are potentially random. Like, some things, like there's systems that are so complex that like when you get the bug is, random. Which is another part is, like whenever you're using Resonite, there's literally like millions of things going on every second that you don't even think about, that you don't know about. Like the code is doing so much stuff in the background. There's like various like background processes. There's like, long running tasks. There's like there's just a lot of things, like, beyond like what you see that happen, and any of them can contribute to like, the bug you got. And I've had a number of reports where somebody would be, this is happening because of this thing. And people kind of jump to conclusions and everybody kind of piles on it. And it becomes like, this whole thing. And the problem is when we look at it and you don't give us, the straight facts, you give us the reasons, we kind of start investigating that. We go down a rabbit hole only to find that like there's zero correlation. And now we just lost, a whole bunch of time, doing that. So it's best to like, stick to the facts, like stick like to like what you've seen. And if you think something is causing an issue, do actual like, proper testing of it to verify that's the cause. I actually have like a specific example because this happened like I think like a month or two back. And this was a little bit like upsetting too because like it led to people like getting very panicky. It's when we actually, wait, was it the socialist? Yeah, it was the so it was when we introduced the invite requests, because what would happen is, like we would ask the ask to join button, and then people made a report saying the ask to join button leaks people's invisible status. And people started panicking. They were like, oh no, what's happening? Like the invisible status is getting leaked, like this is a security thing and so on. And people started freaking out about it. Because somebody was like, okay, this person, like, they went offline, but I still see the button to join them is leaking invisible status. And that's what the report was. And then I started looking into it, and I found like there was no correlation at all. And what was actually happening is if user was online, and they would go invisible, like they would go either invisible or they would actually go offline, the button just doesn't get cleared. So, like, it would essentially just stay there. If you saw that user previously online and they would go offline, the button would stay. If they go invisible, it would also stay there, because from the client's perspective, when somebody goes invisible, it behaves the same as if they went offline. And the easy way to test that, and it's something that people could have done themselves. Like if Because people started saying, this happens when somebody goes invisible. So the first thing I did is I used 2 accounts. I logged in, in both of them, make sure it's online, and I went to like invisible, the button stayed there. Then I reset, log on both accounts, make sure both are online, and then actually logged off one of the accounts, like actually logged off instead of going offline, and the button was also there. So there was a very easy way to verify that it has nothing to do with the invisible status, but people made that connection, jumped to conclusions, started panicking, started freaking out, for no reason. And one of the reasons it's also upsetting is because, like, this is oftentimes how rumors start, because, we've seen that happen with other stuff. And, like, what I kind of got worried, like, is that people are going to be like, oh, Resonite, like, leaks invisible status because, somebody jumped to a conclusion. And it becomes really hard to kind of, fix that after the fact, because, like, once people kind of start spreading that, like, it's like it becomes very, very hard to kind of like change the information. Like I've even had cases where some people would still think like in the past, like I've talked with people who didn't want to use some features because they thought like there was specifically cloud variables, and they didn't want to use cloud variables because they thought you cannot delete them. And the problem is, at the time they told me that, you were able to delete them for over 2 years. And that user was using, the software for a year, which means at the time they joined, you were already able to delete them for a year. And somehow, 2 years later, they still think you can't delete them, even though you were able to delete them for 2 years, and they were like avoiding to use them. And that's one of the kind of dangers of like rumors, and that like that information can be very, very slow to spread and very slow to correct, because some of the stuff just kind of like once the rumor kind of starts, it can kind of go on for a very, very long time. And I wish like more people would kind of think critically about things, and if you see some kind of claim, put some effort into verifying it, make sure it's actually right. Make sure like there's like a basis to it, because people will say things, people will make connections when there's none, and you want to be kind of methodical about it. You kind of want to be scientific about it, because on my end, that's something we have to do as engineers, because we can't fix problems and we can't fix bugs if we don't understand them. So like doing that kind of stuff, jumping to conclusions, like it's generally, from developer perspective, it's not is detrimental, because like we jump to conclusions, then like we end up exploring the wrong path, and like we won't be able to fix it, because if there's no connection, that means there's no way to kind of fix it through that connection, and we have to find the actual root of the issue. Sorry to kind of hijack you, Schnoppet.
Oh no, that's fine. Like I completely I agree with all of that. Like a similar thing happened at like a water park I was going to in real life, where a bunch of the kids thought like pressing this like pole would make like the water sprayers like spray or something, and it just, there's no correlation. It was the same thing as the pigeon thing.
Yes.
They just did it because it kept doing it, and they thought they were doing it.
Yeah, it happens a lot. It's how our brains work. So it's like, it's natural, like it happens to everyone. What you have to do is, be aware of it, and, use methods to get around it. If you think there's a connection, put some effort into verifying it's actually there. Especially if you're like, either report it, or if you want to, freak out about it, make sure you actually have a reason to do so. There's also a video I wanted to bring, because this is very, very, very relevant to this. So I just saw this like today, and it's pretty much running on point, so I'm just gonna put it here and I'm gonna hit play.
Could you go through proper etiquette for making bug reports? Yeah, the best thing you possibly do is you write your description of what happened, right? So you don't say, this happens, like, I'm mad at you, you're a piece of shit. Just say, what happened to you? Then, based on the things that you did, in the order that you did them. List out everything that led up to that moment. Not what you think did it, the things you actually did. And then on the last line, put a little arrow and say, this was the bugged behavior, whatever it is. So it's like, I engaged in PvP, I went to cast this spell, I was stunned at the time that the spell tried to be cast, and I was able to cast this spell despite being stunned. That's the bug, right? It's not about your feelings about it. It's not about if you think the developer's dog shit. It's not about if you hate the video game. It's about what happened. And then you just write that. Yeah. Write it like a stardate log. Yeah, bingo. Exactly that.
Like, this is beautiful, because this kind of summarizes a lot of the, you know, kind of issues we kind of have with it. And because there's another part, like, you know, some people get like very kind of emotional when they report something, and they're like, you need to fix, you know, Resonite's gonna die, you know, and like it becomes like this whole thing, and it makes it hard for us to deal with. And if you make issues hard for us to deal with, you know, by not focusing on the facts, not focusing on the issue, you're detracting from us being able to actually fix it. So if your goal is to fix things, you know, or for us to fix things, the best thing you can do is make our job as easy as possible on that.
Yes.
Anyway, just this.
I won't hold the topic too much longer, but I was just going to say that like that video is very much right. Like I too often, like, I see, like, I've been browsing a bunch of other GitHub repos recently, and like, you know, sometimes I'll see people getting like mad and like the issues and whatever, and be like, well, why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing that? You just can't do that. Like the issues place is for putting issues and
It's for
discussing
solving
them.
problems.
Yes, regardless of how you feel, don't bring emotions into it. And this is something that, like, I think a lot of people need to learn to just not bring emotions into it.
Yeah.
Like, and this is especially true, like, if you ever, like, also do, like, let's say you become, like, you know, a developer for some, you know, little VR company, right? Internally, like, you know, the same thing, like when you make pull requests, you know, if the reviewer is saying like, hey, could you like tweak this? Why did you do this? You don't get defensive or emotional. You just be like, well, I did it for this reason. If you want me to fix it, I'll fix it. Yada yada yada. Just like be very objective.
Yes.
I don't know where I'm going with this, but
No, that is a good point. It's like, you have to realize that GitHub and reporting issues is there to solve problems. And like, it's understanding, you know, if you're like frustrated with something and you want to vent, but the places where you report bugs is the wrong place to do it, because when you do that, it makes, like, it straight up makes it uncomfortable for us. It makes it kind of frustrating to deal with it. And what you're doing is you're essentially hurting your own issue. If you want it to get fixed, you know, by being sort of either like mean about it or angry about it, you know, you're making it harder for us to kind of engage with that issue and harder for us to actually fix it. If you want it to be fixed, focus on the facts, make our job as easy as it is, or easy as possible. And that will give your issue like the maximum chance, you know, of actually getting addressed. But yeah, we should move to other questions.
yeah, we got a few.
So next question is from Grand UK. Would it be possible to add a slot input to a dynamic impulse trigger and with variants to act as a return address to make functions with return values possible?
This actually, so this kind of like, we probably, because we plan on having like nested nodes and stuff, which would essentially kind of act as, you know, functions in a way.
Yeah, you're gonna have
So
functions,
probably-
like actual functions.
We probably wouldn't do this just to kind of work around the fact that we don't have those right now when they're already planned. This is another example of like what we were talking about. Like,
If you want functions, ask for functions. Don't ask us, you know, for a very specific way to do it. Because, like, just to give you perspective, like, what I'm having a sexual trouble right now is just being like, what exactly you want to add it? Like, you know, how this fit into things? And then I see the part, like, you're like, you know, so we can make functions. And I'm like, well, we already have a like way to add functions, so now I don't know, like, is there other reasons you would want this kind of thing? Is there other uses? And like, you know, kind of have to be kind of thinking about it. And I'm like, do I want to be thinking about it? Because it feels like, you know, we just do functions and then maybe the rest doesn't matter. And maybe like, and sometimes it happens, maybe you want it for some other reasons, but I don't know those reasons. But if you want functions, we'll just give you functions with nested nodes.
Don't try and ask for like workarounds to things that we don't have right now, because we're probably not going to do those.
Yeah, most of the cases we're just gonna say no because like our time is limited, and workarounds, while they might be quick to implement initially, they oftentimes end up having a pretty bad maintenance cost, and they come to like, you know, bite us in the butt. And then we have to kind of deal with them and have to deal with issues with them, and we have to keep supporting them, because if we stop supporting them, your stuff will break, and we don't want your stuff to break. Which means in a lot of the cases, it's just simple to say no, because we have to think not only about, you know, the time it takes us to implement it initially, we have to think about all the time we will need to invest in the future to make sure it keeps working and it stays supported. And oftentimes workaround, they tend to be dirty and they're really hard to support, and they end up being like big time sinks. So next question is so Platypus744 is asking, could you explain the complications with addressing one-handed tank controls on some controls where equipping a tool? I'm a little confused because I thought some controllers do not have this behavior. For example, I think my old VMR controllers could hold tools and return full locomotion. Thank you. Yes, so it's a controller-specific thing. The main problem is, like, you know, through our system, we need to support wide variety of controllers. And originally, Froox engine, it works specifically with the Vive vans. And the Vive vans, they only have a touchpad. So if you want to move, or if you want to use it for a tool, you know, like, you only have the touchpad to do that. And the problem with that is you essentially, like, in order to use the touchpad, you kind of have to press it. So, like, you know, the using of the, you know, secondary kind of 2D axis is linked to pressing it. And the system was kind of like, you know, built around that. So now when it comes to, like, you know, controllers, like the touch controllers, you know, they have a joystick. And the joystick, you can use it without clicking on it. Which kind of decouples that, but we still need to support Vive vans as well, because people still use them. And then you have controllers like Index, or the Windows Mixed Reality, and they have both touchpad and have the joysticks, which means we can allow you to keep moving with the joystick because there's still touchpad. You can kind of use both at the same time. But if a controller only has like one of those inputs, you know, you cannot really use both at the same time, because then if you try to use the tool, you'd be moving and jumping around. So that's kind of what makes it a fair bit more complicated. And there's like possible ways to decouple it, but it will still have to, like, you know, account for Vive vans, because the Vive vans, like, you can't really decouple it. Like, it doesn't really work without, you know, clicking the touchpad, and that kind of makes it more complicated.
Hey, VR controller makers, more buttons.
More buttons, please.
Please.
It is like, you know, one of those things where, because there's like mods that get around it, but the mods, you know, they don't care about supporting all the controllers, but we do have to, because, you know, we can't just, like, you know, implement something and it just be like, if you have, you know, Vive vans, you know, guess you don't get to play anymore. Like, we can't do that. So it makes the issue far more complicated. Next question's from Bressert. Have either of you seen the Tomorrow Compression tech demo and their in-house I should have pulled it out. And their in-house development and tooling suite? If not, highly recommend checking it out on YouTube. It's a super cool tech demo. I haven't really seen that.
I have not, but, you know, maybe we'll check that out sometime.
Yeah.
And I actually pulled a thing out of the chat because I wanted to respond to it.
Oh, I'll position it.
Yeah, it was this comment here. saying like, sheesh, people are trying to use Protoflux as a full-on programming language, and sure, it can do it, but more often than not, I find myself using it for relatively simple logic. It is meant to be a full-blown programming language. It's just not done yet.
Yeah.
And
There's
even
more
though
things
it's
that will
not
come to
done,
it.
even though it's not done, I do highly recommend still trying, like at least trying to wield it as like a fully fledged language, because that shows us where the weak spots are, and that shows us like where we can improve it to like make it do the things that like programmers need it to do.
Like,
I just
it
wanted
is
to comment on
technically
that.
a Turing-complete language, and we had people who actually build emulators with it. They would literally simulate, like, CPUs with, like, Protoflux. So, it is Turing complete. It's like usually it's more question of like tooling. So it's is it
Yeah.
easy to write? Some things you will have to get a little more laborious about. It's actually an interesting thing because sometimes like people and like it used to be like that for old machines like when we were like had like console in the like 80s and 90s, like they had very limited CPUs, so you actually couldn't have too many abstractions, and you had to deal a lot like with like partitioning your memory, doing stuff like in a loop, like over like some kind of block of data, rather than like having abstractions like with objects and nested calls and things like that. Those kind of approaches, like some people end up like using those, and it actually makes things work pretty efficiently and pretty well. So it's like oftentimes like it can be like matter of like how you approach things. We do want to add like more features like nested nodes, like to kind of allow a lot more kind of modular kind of approach, allow a lot more kind of modern approaches. But there's like oftentimes like there are ways about it. You just have to change your programming paradigm, and there will also come things in the future that will make things just easier.
Yeah, I did just want to highlight that though, because you should definitely try and use it like it's meant to be used. Use it like a full programming language, find all of its strong and weak spots,
Yeah.
and that lets you make better code, and that lets us know where it can improve.
Yes. Oh, and we got another question. I saw the beginning of it. I'm already like, I think I can just answer it on that, but I'm just gonna read it. Norlock is asking, is there any planning on implement anti-cheat? I'm just gonna say no. I'm not gonna just no anti-cheat. For example, in bad mode to steal info about account, their secret, or make a custom mod loader. So we example don't have to use other mod loaders, but just build Resonite and trust it. Yeah, so like I said, no, we're not gonna do that. To get a little bit like deeper answer is like, and there's actually multiple aspects to this a bit. In general, we like Resonite is built as a platform for thinkers, because it's kind of like big part of my background. I love like tinkering with stuff. I love like doing stuff. One of the inspirations is also like the modding community for Minecraft, because like I've been playing Minecraft for a long time, and like I really enjoyed like playing a lot of mods and just seeing what kind of creativity people can do, just expanding upon the game. So my goal was to build something that's a strong kind of core, that's strong basis, and people can expand, they can build around it, they can do all kinds of like kind of cool shenanigans, and it's kind of built for that. So like modding is also kind of in our sort of nature, kind of DNA, and we would not want to like make it impossible. So this is one of the reasons like we wouldn't like introduce like feature like that. It is possible somebody can make a malicious mod, that could like steal your account. Like when you type your password, it hooks a function, it sends it to some server. That is possible for a mod to do. But also like if we have it's not about the mod loader, because the mod loader doesn't really prevent that from happening. Usually the way you kind of prevent it is, you have like a good kind of community system where the mods are submitted, they can be ranked, they can be audited by the community, and make sure, they are trusted and safe. There's a certain amount of risk, with mods in particular. It's kind of no different, it's kind of no different, to like, just downloading some program for the internet, because you're downloading somebody's code that can literally do anything to your computer. It potentially can, encrypt all your files, and like then blackmail you for like, the decryption key, like, ransomware does. Like that's a risk that is very real risk when you download stuff like from the internet, which means you want to download from like, trusted sources. So what we probably do is at some point like, introduce more sort of official repository if it's some kind of, community managed, reporting system, auditing system. Like probably have requirements. If you want to submit to this, you have to like, you have to publish it through a repo. So, you essentially submit all your code, and then mod is actually built from that code, which other people can check, and check like if there's like anything malicious in it. And I feel like that alone would help a lot, but we probably wouldn't want to prevent people from using, other mod loaders if they really want to. Like if you don't like ours for some reason, we still want people to have the freedom, to go like to like a website and download another thing and, play with that. So we wouldn't like really restrict things, in that regard. Because I feel like, that's everybody's kind of choice. If you decide, you don't want to use like an official thing, you have the freedom to kind of go and download, like whatever you want. You're taking on a risk, and I think it's also important to be, aware of the risk, but it's, up to the decision of every user if you want to do that or not. So that's kind of, the stance on it.
It'd be kind of like if Windows tried to prevent you from downloading a program or something, right? Because like Resonite's meant to kind of be, we sometimes call it an operating system. And it'd be like if your operating system said, no, you can't do this because we know better. So like you wouldn't want that. But also, anti-cheats are just kind of like an uphill battle, man. Like all it takes is for one person to make it easy, and now it's easy forever.
Yeah. Okay. So that's actually all the questions we have right now. We still got about like half an hour left, so feel free to ask, more questions. We can like bubble about some other stuff. I actually like was thinking about like talking about some of the MMC stuff, because I wasn't able to until now because I was one of the judges. And I went through literally every single MMC entry. Like I have about like 32 hours of footage that I'll be publishing soon. So you can kind of see like me kind of going through everything and, going through your entry. There's been a lot of like really cool stuff there. Some of the categories like where, some of the categories like they're like, they had more this year. Like the game category had a lot more, the meme category. ESD had quite a bunch like this year. There's some categories that were kind of poorer, like a lot of the kind of avatar stuff, which made kind of like a little bit harder. The word social, like there was also kind of a bunch of cool ones that was kind of difficult deciding, which ones, receive like the award. So there's like a lot of really, really cool stuff. There's also been like some like where, I'm not gonna like start like specifically, but one of the general recommendations I would have for people, like because like everybody did like a really good job. There's been entries that have been also made like, completely new people on the platform, which, the entries like like some of them are even like unfinished, but it's still good to see people like, making things and participating, even though like, they haven't like reached like, the skill level of some other people who have been here for years. So it's like everybody should be proud of like what you made, and if you like, participated, like I often like to say like, the award that you might win in the long term, that's a lot less valuable than the knowledge and the skills you develop making those entries, because those skills, that's something that stays with you forever. That's something that like you can use for future projects, you can use it for your, for your work. Like it's something every single person who made something gets to keep. And if it's like one thing I would kind of suggest to people, like when you're like participating in something, is like, you know, like when you make an entry, focus on the core of it. Like, you know, try to get the core of whatever you're making, you know, working as fast as possible. Like, you know, that should be the earliest things, you know, you get going, and do some, like, you know, playtesting on it. Because if you have a strong core, you know, then you can spend the rest of the month, you know, building around it and adding more, but you know you have the strong core. And this oftentimes matters more than, you know, adding as many functions as you can. Because sometimes what kind of happens is, you know, people try to get as many things in as possible, and they don't get, like, you know, the core doesn't end up, like, working until, like, you know, late, or maybe not at all. And essentially it kind of almost like sabotages, like, you know, all the functionality, all the time you put into it, if your core breaks. Because if it breaks, you know, people won't be able to get to all those functions you made, all those cool features. You know, they essentially end up like being kind of for nothing, at least as in the context of the competition. So that's one of the kind of things, because I used to participate like in game jams as well, like a while back. And this was one of the most important skills I found, is try to get like I would literally try to build the experience I wanted to make sure it's like, you know, it can be finished, like, you know, start to finish as soon as possible. There was, for example, one, you know, it was like 3 weeks, and I think I got, like, you know, I got the experience, you could get through the whole thing, you know, in a week and a half or something like that, like, you know, and it was kind of bare bones, but like I knew you can get start to finish, it's a complete experience, and the remainder of the time I could spend, you know, expanding it. You know, like I would add like a little more there, a little more there, expand this bit, and, you know, I know the way I like to like compare it is, like, you know, it's almost like you build a skeleton first. You know, it's very bare bones. It's literally bare bones, and then you spend adding meat to it, and no matter when you run out of time, you know you have that solid skeleton, and you just add as much meat as you can, like, you know, for the rest of, like, you know, for the remainder of the time that you have, and that tends to work like really well. So that's my kind of MC inspired PSA.
I think these next two are more.
Oh, there's quite a bunch. Okay,
yeah,
let's go through the questions.
Yeah, I think that the top two are mostly just like gesture, just kind of.
Yeah, there was like talk more about mirrors, reflection probes, and optimization. I would be more specific. I don't have like anything specific, yeah, on that one, so I'm gonna skip that one. I don't know if this is serious either. Official anti-exploit policy for Windows Defender. Yeah, I don't even know where to start on this one.
Can I read this next one?
Okay.
Baplar asks, hang on, I gotta be able to actually see the comment. I can't read it. Okay.
Does this help?
As a tech-loving hermit, yeah, that's fine. Babelar asks, as a tech-loving hermit, I only tend to go on Resonite when I actually have a reason to do so. Like working on a project, joining a scheduled event, etc. And now that MMC is over, I find myself without an active project. I love Resonite to bits, but I find myself with no motivation to boot it up. What advice would you give someone like me to encourage using Resonite more often? Do something hard. That's what I usually do. If I don't have like an active project, I kind of start craving, like, what can I do that like not really anybody's done before, like something that's like hard, something someone wouldn't normally do. And so I often go with my go-to is do something hard. Like I don't know, for example, recently I've been playing with this nifty little library called IMGUI to make like UIs and stuff. And it lets you basically implement whatever rendering you want on it. And I thought, well, this wouldn't be practical or really useful, but it would be hard and it would be cool if I could make IMGUI use Resonite as a rendering backend and like puppet a UIX canvas to draw the UI. Not because it's useful, but because, it's funny and maybe I learned something, and maybe it does end up being useful in the end. That's kind of why I do those things. Doing something, even though it might not initially have a purpose, will still teach you something. And that's kind of my advice there.
It's definitely good, like, challenging yourself doing projects. I'd also have, like, some other, like, advice. Is like, one of them would be, there's creator jams, they're every weekend, and they always have a theme. So you can, join those, like, build stuff as part of them. Like, they're free to join, like, whatever you want to do in those, you can do, like, it can be technical, it can be graphical, like, whatever, like, as long as it kind of fits with the theme. So it might be a good way to kind of, if you need something external. The other part would be, maybe find some teams to join, because, there's sometimes people who are working on things, they're like making games, they're making worlds. So it might be worth, like, kind of reaching out, seeing what they're up to, if they need some help. Poke around Discord if anybody needs help, like, if in any projects. So that might be a good one too. And the other one is, like, you could, like, if you wanted to, you could literally start, like, one of your own too. Start like a project, so like we can gather people, maybe like a sandbox session where just people are messing around. Have a theme. Get people to join and kind of, like, work with and collaborate, because I find, like, once you kind of, when they open up something and you kind of give people a starting point, oftentimes, people will kind of pile on it, and cool things start happening.
Yeah. And I actually think can we scroll down a bit? I think I saw a question that didn't get caught. Oh, no, never mind. All good.
There's also, like, a follow-up on it. I know that chill out, do other stuff, come back when you have new projects is an option, but also kind of want to hang out more often, And we can just hang out as well, like, poke people, join worlds.
Yeah, go outside your comfort zone. I know a lot of people kind of get into this kind of rut where they're like, man, like, all my friends are, like, in private worlds, but, like, I just don't want to bother them,
There's a new button for it.
Yeah, and there's a new button.
Poke that
so
button.
Bother them.
Poke it, spam everyone.
They're your friends, and more often than not, your friends want to see you.
Spam that button. We should give it, like, like, how, like, YouTube is like, like, hit that bell. Like,
remember to hit that invite button.
Hit that request invite. We gotta give it a symbol, and be like, slam that button.
Curb stomp that button.
We got another question from Norlog. Are you planning open applications for web front-end developer? Not hating the current website, but I'd like to kind of make refresh the current look of the website and maybe implement more real-time stuff, and maybe official kind of dashboard for accounts, words, and other stuff if possible. So right now we don't have any positions kind of open. It's probably gonna change at some point, because we definitely use, like, more people for those kinds of things. But I would say, keep an eye on our, like, Discord and socials, because we usually, like, if we do open a position, like, we'll announce it. It's also, like, one of those things, if we do open, like, a public, kind of position for someone, there's usually gonna be, like, multiple candidates, so we'll be, have, like, some kind of selection process based on those. Yeah, I would just say kind of keep an eye on them, like, if we can, like, get more people on board, or, like, then we have the resources to do it, like, we'll definitely, like, open up more positions, but right now there's not. Next question is from Dusty Sprinkles. Do you think you'll go into the process of deciding winners for each category? Knowing what made a certain entry win over others might be helpful for future creators too. Yeah, so there's a few things. One of them is, like, what I mentioned earlier. Make sure your core stuff works, because oftentimes entries that can be, entries that are simpler, that have fewer stuff, but they work pretty smoothly, they have advantage over ones that don't work, or that are broken in some way. If your entry is, like, broken, something's not working, oftentimes, like, during the judging process, it kind of becomes this whole thing of, like, are we like doing something wrong? Is this supposed to be this way, or is it broken? And we have to spend time figuring it out, and we don't actually get to experience the entry, and it kind of becomes frustrating, you know, because we're not sure, like, from our viewpoint, it becomes like it's ambiguous with her. We're just missing something. Like, are we supposed to, like, you know, press some button that's supposed to activate something, and that's why this is not doing the thing? Or is it just broken and we spend a lot of time on it and we just like, eh. And that probably hurts the entry more than anything. So the best thing you can do is get the core working as fast as you can and do playtesting. Bring like fresh people, watch how they played, watch how they kind of go through it, watch like do they understand the instructions, you know. That is a big thing, you know, like if you make it smoother and easy for people to understand, that'll work, like, you know, that's gonna work in your favor. The other part is also, you know, making sure it's accessible. So like there's a lot, like some entries, like, you know, you enter there and it's just like walls of text, and that can also be kind of, you know, because usually we just go like, oh, it's a wall of text, we're not gonna, you know, read that, and we'll be like, okay, can we actually just figure out how to use this? So having, like, you know, short kind of explanations, more graphical things, or making just, you know, some intuitive tutorial, that also kind of helps, you know, if your thing kind of needs something. Presentation definitely matters too. Like if you make something and it just kind of looks like you kind of threw it in a grid world and, you know, and we're kind of done with it, that, you know, that hurts it too. Because like it usually gets judged, you know, on kind of multiple things. Also keep in mind, oftentimes, you know, to avoid, like, you know, bias, is like we have guest judges, and like we had like one year who's like a Poe, who's a curator at Rain Dance. He's not, like, you know, a regular Resonite user, so like he's kind of unfamiliar with all of the things. And we kind of had a similar thing happen because last year we also got 2 judges who were, like, you know, not Resonite regulars. And we went to the narrative entry. I forget actually what it was called. The ring something. Save the ring, or what was it called? Sorry, do you remember?
Was what called?
The entry last year.
For this map?
No, last year.
Sorry, I apologize.
Save the ring. So it was the Save the Ring about Neolanders, and like that one required a lot of like Resonite knowledge. It required, you know, knowing what the material tool is, you know, what other things are, and we literally, like, you know, we went like, and usually, like, you know, me and Medra, we kind of go through things independently, like we kind of go through everything, and like when the guest judges are going through things, we try to not influence them on anything, and we'd literally see them get into the experience, and they would be like, you know, presented with, like, you know, material tool, and they don't know what it is. So like they're just not able to progress through it. So stuff like that can also, like, you know, hurt it. So you have to kind of, like, you know, make it as friendly as you can, you know, like make like, and that's kind of what also circles back, you know, to the playtesting, because with playtesting, you know, you can discover these things very early. So it's but it's also, like, you know, like if you can playtest with people who are not that familiar with Resonite, you know, make sure like you're kind of aware of, like, you know, what are things that the Resonite user would know, because not everyone who judges it is gonna be a regular Resonite user. So like if we rely on some, like, you know, knowledge that a lot of seasoned players will have, not all judges will have that knowledge. So that's kind of another thing. There's probably like a few other things, like because there's always like kind of multiple factors that kind of go into it. Make sure like your thing kind of, like, you know, fits as well, like with the category, because sometimes like that can end up hurting it, you know, because it kind of gets judged, you know, on some of the kind of criteria. And I know like Miller, he wants to like tighten like some of the definitions for the categories, because there was some kind of weirdness with that this year too. I think that's probably the main things. I probably could think of a few more. Let me just do a quick peruse through the category if I remember anything. But yeah, sometimes like I would say like one of the core things is, you know, sometimes like less can be more if you can add more polish to it. Like for example, like this world is like, you know, it's very pretty. It's not as big as, you know, like for example last year's, but it's very polished. It's very packed, you know, which it makes it feel good. And it's kind of, you know, like would like work like strongly in its favor. There's been like some entries like that where we probably weren't able to get through them super much because they would essentially kind of break, and we kind of just gave up. Let me think. Yeah, there's also like there's actually another entry too, like where like it looked very impressive, but it was like it didn't have like much of a tutorial. Like it had a lot, and it looked like there's so much work put into it, but we couldn't figure out like the core of it. So like making sure like it's friendly to users, you know, going into it, that helps too. Because like if we don't understand the entry, you know, that makes it a lot harder to kind of judge. We also had like some like they're like, you know, what I kind of mentioned is like there's some kind of where like in the wrong kind of, or like we're not in the best category they could be, and they're like, you know, some like where it kind of hurt their chances, where like as happened previous years too, like where if somebody like, you know, put entry in a different category, maybe more fitting one, they would have probably won, but because they kind of put it into another one, they didn't. Yeah, I think that's. Yeah, I think that's kind of like the core of it.
We got 10
You know,
minutes
just
left.
say again.
I was saying we have 10 minutes left.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, like I might have like some more crows like maybe next week too. Like once I kind of process everything, because I'm really busy this week. But whoa!
Oh,
Thank you for the bits.
someone. Oh yeah, Jack did.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Jack. I think this next one.
I wasn't gonna like.
It wasn't talk about you.
I mean, in part I was. I mean, it wasn't just your like entry, but like yeah, this like the. I'm just gonna say Lagrange point, like, you know, it exhibited some of those things, like where we just like I tried going through it twice. I just couldn't get the crafting to work because like the inventory, I was like moving things around and so on, and I restarted the world and tried again, you know, and it like we just couldn't craft stuff because like the number of items, even though it was in the storage, it kept going to 0. And when it wasn't 0, the craft button wouldn't activate like not like, you know, over 90% of the time, so it just didn't work. And then Medra was also trying the same, and he ran into the same thing, and he also tried twice, and we were just like, whatever, like we literally can't play the game because there's a like, you know, bug in the core mechanic. And it just and because we're kind of sad because we're like, there's a lot of work that was put into this, but it's just undermined by it not working. And it's not the first time like this happened. There's like been a number of kind of entries where it happens too, which is like why we like do playtesting, get your core, you know, as fast as like, you know, as fast as you can, and playtest. You know, make sure like new players, people who don't know what your entry is about, can get through it. But yeah, like it's not just that entry, but it is one of those that kind of exhibited that thing. But it happened even the previous MMCs. It's one thing that like we kind of keep seeing, and that keeps hurting things that might have had a very solid chance at winning, but they end up like undermined by that.
I think this next one's for me. Also, we got to speed through these.
Yes.
If it's okay, I'll let you pull that up.
Nope.
If it's okay, it's cute how Cyro's ears move when his eyes move. Could you explain how you did it? Too long didn't read. Yes, some Protoflux to like kind of like I did something to like make them smooth, and I used the blend shapes typically used to like move the like eyelids around when you look your eyes around to instead move my ears when I look left and right. So yeah, that's how I did that.
Next one's from Modify Arc. My shy friend wants to know, why is far clip part of the avatar? Shouldn't be part of work component. I can understand near clip, but why far clip? We just kind of expose both so you can kind of like mess with it, but it's definitely something we probably want to clean up. Make it so it's defined more per world. Because yeah, like you would usually like modify like far clip like that way. In part it's like because you can also make experiences where, you know, there are customized avatars. So like if you make a game that requires uncertain far clip, you can just make it part of the avatar and that works, but it's more niche that way, and we'll probably make a system that like has it like defined per world rather than per avatar. Next question. Platypus, I think in past has been expressed that avatar and animation can look odd due to near instant acceleration in walk mode. Have you any thoughts on changing reward defaults, adding new word settings, acceleration, ramp speed, and jump height for new player comfort? Imagine personal and legacy content can make this difficult. We probably wouldn't do that because like it doesn't feel good. Like it feels very sluggish, and there's like some games that do it, but I feel like a lot of people wouldn't really like it because like it feels sluggish and like it's unresponsive.
Takes a lot of tuning to make it feel right.
Well, Merlini, hey, so on previous Resonance, I wanted to ask about particle gap issue related to squishy dynamic bones. May I give you a link so you can see my example? Probably not now because we have 5 minutes left.
Yeah.
Don't leave these questions until the end. Next question, I think to my previous question, movement set. Oh, yeah, it's the comfort. Like it doesn't feel good like with having like a ramp. Oh, we already went through the
Hey, this last one's easy. Yes, mods are allowed.
Allowed?
They are allowed. They're very loud.
Oh, they mean like game mods. I thought they meant like like moderators. I was like, are moderators like loud, like or something? Because hold on, let me just pull it out so you can see what we're talking about.
Allowed.
Allowed. I was like, what?
But yes.
I was like, do mods yell at people or something? I don't know.
I mean, I do, but only when it's funny.
Yes. But modding is allowed. Like what we do as a philosophy, we look at intent. So like if you like do something to say steal somebody's avatar, to try to, you know, crash or, you know, do bad things to someone, we don't care how you did it. You know, we don't care if you did it through a mod, we don't care if you did it, you know, to Protoflux, we don't care if you did it through like whatever other mechanism. What matters is you wanted to, like, you know, harm another player. That's what we take issue with. And that's, you know, what we act on. Which means conversely, if you make mods that are, you know, helpful, that like are useful for things, that's perfectly fine. You know, like your intent is what matters, not the methods.
Yep.
And that's another question from Modify Ask. Froox, what is your opinion on VS Codium? Is that like the open...
Yeah, it's
what's the
really
difference
just
between
like
VS Code?
It's VS Code, but without any of the Microsoft stuff in it.
Oh, I haven't used it. I'd use VS Code like for smaller like files, but that's about it. It's pretty neat.
If you want my opinion on it, I don't really care for it. And that's not because it's just like it's open source, like fully open source, but because like it's unfortunately like an Android situation. All of the stuff that Microsoft put into VS Code, that's their stuff, just it unfortunately makes it like 10 times more useful, and so I just can't use VS Codium.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, even VS Code, it's like open source, isn't it?
I think like the open source part is, yeah.
I don't like use it like for anything big. I just kind of smaller files. So we got 2 minutes left, so I can still answer this one. What are mini expressions in iManager? Are they different to saccade? Yeah, like they're like saccades are like, you know, small kind of like eye movements. We're like moving between kind of things. So, you know, they just kind of like, you know, like if your eyes are, for example, looking at an object, you know, maybe like looking here, they jump here, they jump here, they jump here. These are saccades. Expressions can be like, you know, like you'll kind of look up to think, you know, or you like kind of look this way, you know, just kind of like you're not looking at a particle thing, you're kind of doing more of an expression. So it is like similar, but also different. And we got 1 minute left. Let's see. Xiliev is asking, are you planning to make any changes to user interface to simplify it? Last time I tried Resonite, I found it a bit confusing to navigate. The short answer, yes. We reworked
That's a
like
big
the
topic.
settings UI. It is a big topic. We did rework the settings UI like a while back. We plan to kind of rework like pretty much majority of the rest of the UI. It's a gradual process. We're gonna focus on it, but right now the focus is on performance. So it's gonna be sometime after that is done. And with that, that's all the questions. We can't really go like into detail on this one because normally I would have, but no, we don't have time. So thank you very much, for like joining the stream. Thank you, thank you for asking all the questions. Like, thank you for making all the cool stuff, over for MMC, outside of MMC, and thank you for supporting this platform. It's video support and just kind of being part of the community that kind of helps this place keep going. If you're supporting us on Patreon or Stripe, thank you as well, because that helps keeps the lights on, keeps it so we can kind of keep working on it. If you are on Patreon, consider switching to Stripe, because we do get more money out of that. Even if you pay the same, Patreon takes roughly 15%, Stripe takes about 5%, which means we got 10% more. So it's it helps us quite a bit. But overall, just thank you, and we'll see you with the next one, next week. If let me see if there's any channel to raid, because we usually like to raid anyone else streaming Resonite. So let me just do a quick check. Is anybody streaming Resonite? Ooh, there's a user Brasileiro. Let me check. It looks like they're on Resonite. I don't think that's Resonite. Oh, this is in Portugal, so no, this is VR chat, so no, I'm not gonna raid that. Okay, unfortunately there's nobody to raid, so we're just gonna end the stream here. So again, thank you very much for watching. Thank you, Sarah, for being here, helping me answer questions.
Yeah.
I'm gonna put Sarah back
Oh.
where he was, and bye-bye.
No. No, I'm still